And you're live.
Hey everyone. Hi, I am Matt and I write under the name MD Presley, and today we are going to examine the AALC magic systems. It's a little system for looking at magic systems. There is a handout to it, by the way, if you can't see from the, there we go, the very clever background that my wife suggested that I do. If you head on over to mdpresley.com/AALC, there's the handout there's a handout PDF that you can download about this. And also I'm going to be scrolling through that part because a lot of this information is there. So it's my cheap PowerPoint because that's the level of professionalism you can come to expect here. Speaking of professionalism, this has been a day from hell, and it wouldn't be a QuaranCon if my kid didn't miss his nap and my wife, oh, that's not Freudian. My wife was supposed to put him down, but she's not here. So I put him down and he's in the next room kicking the wall. So forgive me if I have to get up and leave suddenly. QuaranCon, that's why we're all here. A little bit about me real quick, other than, kids and daily disasters. I have a screenwriting background. I spent, which means you work a lot of parallel jobs in the industry. And one of mine was to I managed a team that assessed screenplays, which is my wife's PhD, is an assessment. So I take a lot of that background. And as a screenwriter, eventually, no producer is going to touch my big fantasy world stories. So I'm going to publish them, and I put out my first one, which is the Flintlock Fantasy reimagining of the Civil War. And, prose wasn't great, not a great prose writer, but everyone complimented the world building, which sent me down this path that started off as a side project and has now come to dominate my life. Basically, there was no unified world building theories kind of thing. They were out there, and every author had their own method. This is how I world build. You should world build this way. And they were all different, and a lot of them opposed each other. So I set about trying to, put that all together, synthesize it, and it led to this series. First book worked before fantasy was even named as a genre, before Lord of the Rings, before The Hobbit. My internet connection is unstable, it tells me, because yes, quarantine. Are we still back? Okay. Anyways, traces it all the way through Jemisin's work right now. All about the world building is now I'm back, it says. Anyways, yeah, so traces stuff all the way from Tolkien early, before fantasy was even a genre, all the way through Jemisin's current work in world building. It's got a lot of other people, a lot of other theories. There's a textbook out there by Mark Wolf, and a fellow named Sanderson that we'll discuss in a little bit shows up quite a bit when we discuss magic. Second book is, I don't know if it's even worth showing, but yes, it's all about putting these into practice. The series is called Forging Fantasy Realms, which is a YouTube channel I have where I demonstrate all the techniques, tricks, and tips, usually by building a world on the fly. I'm kind of a world building Bob Ross, where I put some happy little elves over here in the corner, and we look at how to do all these things. Anyways, I spent a lot of time about world building. That's basically all I'm trying to say. And so with that in mind, and the theoretical kind of background of world building, I wanted to look at magic systems. And when it's say this magic AALC magic system systems, it's just more of an observation. They're not rules. I believe in a tools, not rules approach, which means have what you need and use the right tool for the right thing. You wouldn't use a screwdriver to hammer a nail. So why are you, doing, I don't know, metaphor breaks down. But anyways, yes, of course you want something. Go to sleep. Oh, God dang it. All right. Sorry, I got to go get my son's stuffed animal and put it back into his bed. QuaranCon. All right. So I'm very sorry about that. And I know that's going to be there forever on YouTube. So AALC, as I was saying, it's more of a tools, not rules approach. These are patterns that happen in magic systems, a kind of progression that they go through, but it is all based around narratives, much like Sanderson talks about. These are all things for making your story better, your fantasy story, not your fantasy game. A fantasy game, you want it to be balanced so all the players can take part, and no one, like the necromancer isn't more powerful than the cleric kind of thing. Quite the opposite. When you're working with narratives, you often want to unbalance it against the characters themselves, make the bad guy more powerful and them a lot weaker. So that in mind, these are based on Sanderson's 4 laws of magic. I know most people who are familiar with them think there's 3, but there's actually 4, and also 4 Cs of Worldbuilding. Just start off with Sanderson. You may have heard of him. Did the finished Wheel of Time. It's written 2 or 3 books, and kind of has the largest Kickstarter for like that 41 million, I think it was. Kind of put the traditional publishers on notice. Anyways, he teaches, has a wonderful podcast. It's very popular. Probably have heard of him. He has 4 laws about about magic systems, and we're going to look at those real quick. I have videos out about this. Sanderson has videos out about it. It's all over the place. So we're just going to look at this exceedingly briefly, just so we can lay a groundwork for this. His first rule was that an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional, in caps, yelling in Sanderson's own words, pardon me, how well the reader understands the magic. This is like his biggest gift to us to think about magic systems, and that is that it's all about the understanding of the audience. If the audience doesn't understand it very much, that's what we call a soft magic system. If they do understand it, and it's a hard magic system, and the harder magic systems can solve the conflict. It's satisfying because the audience knows it. Soft systems are not satisfying to resolve the conflicts of the story, because the audience doesn't understand what it means, and it feels like Deus Ex Machina when all of a sudden, like, oh, I had a magic power and it was all solved. Not satisfying narratively. Might have worked in a game, we don't know. But anyways, Deus Ex Machina if it's a soft system. Keep that in mind for later. Second law: limitations are greater than power. Again, talking about the audience. The audience likes seeing more limited characters use their powers creatively, rather than just see them get stronger and stronger. Yes, caveat being progression and lit RPG, that's all about getting stronger and stronger. But it's still justified, it's earned in those stories. And we watch the character be weak for a while and use their powers creatively. This is really important. Great illustration is Batman versus Superman. Superman has been pretty much tossed every single power at some point in time. I think he had hypnosis during the Silver Age at one point. They're just like, here, have another power, have another power. Batman is rich and clever. Like, I would like to be both of those things, but much more limited in his scope of power. Superman can just punch things, not really satisfying when he solves problems by punching them really hard, versus Batman, who is very clever in the use of his limited powers. And that's why, the 2 of them fighting, you're rooting for Batman because Batman's way out of his league. I'm rooting for Batman. Anyways, third rule: expand instead of adding stuff. Basically, if you have an existing magic system, don't make a second one. Figure out how you can use that one that you currently have within its new, how can you reinterpret it and add new aspects to it rather than building a whole new one. Let's see. He uses extrapolation, streamlining, and interconnection, which is just how you get the things that exist to connect better and keep it consistent kind of thing. Fourth secret rule is err on the side of awesome, which is the rule of cool. We're in this, we're reading fantasy to see really cool stuff. Make it cool. People will forgive a lot of stuff as long as it's cool. All right. So that's part of the AALC system. The other part is the 4 Cs of world building. There is a world building textbook, and I'm totally blanking on the name, by J.P. Wolf, something secondary worlds, inventing secondary worlds, maybe. Anyways, textbook, great resource, very dry, very academic. But he had some really great concepts, and this is kind of building off of that. There's 4 components you need for your world building. You need to be creative. That's the how much it deviates from reality. and how often. Again, this is fantasy, so you need a deviation from reality for it to be fantasy. So how creative it is, people measure that. The second one is how consistent it is, not just internal consistency, which people say that breaks their immersion more than anything else, is internal inconsistencies. But as both Jemison and Tolkien have pointed out on both ends of the timeline there on the fantasy world building, we all take what we know of the real world to measure and to assess fantasy worlds. So as such, if you're not breaking the laws of nature, you have to adhere to the laws of nature. That's consistent. So not just consistent within your world, but also outside of your world to the real world. Let's see what's the other one. Complete is the sense that your world existed before the story happens. There are parts in the story that you're not currently exploring, and that the world will exist after the story is over, unless the Dark Lord actually destroys the world. But that's the whole idea, that the world feels fully thought out. It isn't just a paper scrawled with 4 locations and that's the world. Like, no, it's a living, breathing thing, and that's completeness. And then finally, the fourth one is compelling, and that seems kind of like silly, but it has to be entertaining. We are making worlds to tell stories, at least narratively. The AALC system is, Sanderson is, so things have to be cool. Rule of cool. Even if it's not, this is where tropes come from a lot. They're not incredibly creative. They, but we love them. Tropes exist for a reason. There's Farm Boy with a sword, narratively exists for a reason. I have a video about that, but we'll talk about that another time. Anyways, so all of that groundwork out of the way, only took 12 minutes, plus having to go get a stuffed animal and put him back. Let's define magic real quick. Magic is change wrought by unnatural means. And, this is important because unnatural means unnatural to the audience, not to the characters. I think there's an opening of Avatar: Last Airbender, like in the first few minutes, Katara does some water bending and Sokka's like, oh, you're doing your magic. And she's like, that's not magic, it's bending. And that illustrates it really, really well, is that the characters had a concept of things that were unnatural. Magic was unnatural. Bending was very natural. But we as the audience recognize there is a change to the environment, to the characters, because that is unnatural to us, because as Tolkien and Jemison point out, we use the real world to define the secondary world. All right, let's see. Second thing is like Sanderson's laws, the AALC, as I said, is designed for narratives, to make your story more interesting rather than making your magic system tighter or more balanced. That's not really important. You really want to make the story better. So that's what this system is. So with that in mind, let us look at the AALC. It stands for appearance, abilities, limits, and costs. And these all correspond to different ways that magics come about in stories. And again, a pattern that is, come about and then observed. So let's study that and look at it. AALC is purpose-based. Again, what you need for your story. As Sanderson points out, multiple systems, magic systems can exist within a story. Even though he said, don't do this, he points out that Lord of the Rings has a very, very soft magic system with Sauron and Gandalf, but a very hard system with the ring itself. You know the rules of the ring. You know what happens if you put it on. You know what they're risking. Harry Potter has some soft systems and has a hard level advancing, and it also has costs, which we'll get into in a second. Side note, I'm going to try to use Harry Potter for all of my examples of these, mainly because it's so ubiquitous. It's one of the top exemplars of world building, in my opinion, even though it's a kid's story. That is not my favorite thing. I was an adult when it came out, but it definitely deserves study for why it is so compelling, why people love it so very much. So when I say, when Harry uses his wand and casts Accio, you probably know what I'm talking about, which is why we're using this. I'm not saying it's better than any other. It's just a great example. And it is pretty good. Anyways. So multiple systems can exist within a story. That's very important. And no system is better than the other. Oh, that was my next note. Awesome. Again, what you need for your story. Sandman, Gaiman's Sandman is one of my favorite things in the world. And it is softer than butter. It is so incredibly soft. Meanwhile, Will White's, Cradle series has been the #1 seller. And that's hard progression. That is a hard system. And, people like both, and both of them sell exceedingly well. So, and they are the opposite ends of the spectrum. There we are, opposite ends of the spectrum. So take what you need for the story you're trying to tell. Also important that all systems, not all, systems mostly move from soft to hard. When they are introduced into the story, the audience doesn't know anything about them unless you are writing a story in Dragonlance or in Star Wars and people already know what the Force is. Chances are you're going to have to introduce your story or introduce your magic system bit by bit. And Lit RPG probably can just be like, here you go. But anyways, The Matrix, even though it's science fiction, is a great example of this. It starts off like, what is the Matrix? How can she do these things? And eventually, this is called infodump equity, eventually spells it out and sits the character down and says, this is the magic system. This is what it can do, and this is what it can't. And that is the movement from soft to hard. You see what it can do, it raises the interest in it, and eventually you explain it to the audience. That is the movement from soft to hard, and that's going to be a theme throughout the AALC. Anyways, and even though I just used the Matrix, Harry Potter is great with that because, in the opening first chapter, or it is a prologue. I think it's chapter 1, but it's a prologue because it happens long before the story takes place. Anyways, like you see little hints of magic, and then strange things start happening to Harry. He starts getting letters. There's owls, a talking cat, a talking snake. Probably the talking cat's before that. Anyways, talking snake. He does some magic, and it raises the interest. And then finally, Hagrid sits him down and says, "You're a wizard." So movement from soft to hard, using the Harry Potter example. Oh, that's where I was supposed to say that Harry Potter is ubiquitous. All right, so anyways, I brought up Sanderson and the 4 Cs because the 4 types of the AALC correspond to each one of those, to one of each of those. Yeah, so like the appearance, anyways, we'll get to that in just a second, but that's why I made that, wanted to point those out. All right, and the 4 are, again, appearance, abilities, levels, and costs. And they all build on each other. This is really important. Actually, let's see, let's go to the first screen share if I can figure out how to do it. Wait, nope, that is not what I wanted. Level of professionalism you expect, right? All right, share screen, there we are. All right, so let us do that. All right, so this is the website. If you're not there, again, MD Presley /AALC. As you can see, what system is best for you. There's a wonderful little flow chart to figure out what the types are. And as I said, they all build on each other. Also, it's really hot. So this sport coat is coming off because it is hot. Anyways, so soft is appearance, and it's appearance only. Point is the next level up, and it's going to have abilities and appearance. Level is on top of that, stacks on that. It's going to use limits, abilities, and appearance. Cost builds on all 3 of those and adds costs to it. Very clever names right there. All right, so stop sharing and get back to me and my very sweaty shirt that was under this. All right, so anyways, there's a lag. This section is broken. This is broken into 5 sections. I'm going to look at the YouTube chat in just a second and try to do 2 minutes of looking at stuff. Oh, I probably shouldn't do that actually. Anyways, we'll see how that goes. If you have any questions, type them in right now. And last little thing is that I said that there's a cost system and it builds on all of them, and you can use it kind of anytime you need, even if you're using like a soft system. All right, let's see. Is there anything in chat? Oh, yeah. Little gremlins. Yeah, foreshadowing. All right, no questions. Great. Let us jump into soft systems. And let's see if we can reshare that picture that I took down, because that would be nice. All right, soft systems, share screen. Share. Level of professionalism. All right. Soft systems means appearance. What does the magic look like? What does it look like it's doing to people, and what does the caster or magic user look like as they're doing it? These are really important. Let's see. What did I say? This corresponds to the 4th hidden Sanderson of err on the side of awesome. It also is the 4th C of compelling. It's also fantasy at its purest. As I said, people are coming into, they're reading fantasy because they want to see the impossible. With science fiction, they want to see the impossible that is probable, that technology or science will explain someday. With fantasy, they want something that literally breaks the laws of physics or biology, or breaks something as we know it. So soft systems are that. I did there's a lot of surveys. A lot of my books are survey based. And one word that kept coming up all the time of why I read fantasy is wonder. People want a sense of wonder of seeing something that's impossible. That's what soft systems are. And they get a sense of wonder much more than the harder systems do. And so if that's what you want for your story, you should really, really go for that. And again, remember that all systems start soft. So a lot of times they start as window dressing, and then they'll move to soft villain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Moving on through until they become a level system or a point system or a cost system. But they start off to the audience as a soft system. They don't know what's going on. A lot of times the characters don't know what it is. A lot of times the character is being brought into a new world and the rules will be explained to them later. So it is soft when they see everyone else casting magic and wonder how they can do that. Remember that since it is soft, and this goes back to Sanderson's first rule, it can't solve any problems of the story itself. You can't resolve the conflicts without it feeling like Deus Ex Machina, unless, and this is a big caveat, it is tied to character growth. Hello Future Me has a YouTube channel, which is really, really good. I have a whole bunch of them on my website, that like resources. You should look at those. Anyways, he has a lot of videos looking at how soft systems can level and your magic systems can level, tied to character arc, and how a character arc will unlock powers. Really kind of cool. Yeah, all right, so 5 types really quick. Window dressing, that is the first one. It is usually magic for secondary characters. This is like Gandalf and Obi-Wan. They have powers, and I mean Obi-Wan in the first trilogy, because as far as I'm concerned, there's only one trilogy. Anyways, yeah, they can cause problems. Gandalf can use his magic to, cause things to happen, but he can't resolve it. There is a big caveat, and that is like whatever the wait for me for 5 days kind of thing. Same at the end of The Mandalorian, where, it's all about enduring for somebody to show up and Deus Ex Machina the S out of it. So anyways, but window dressing can create conflict, can't solve it unless it's the first time the character appears. Again, to go to Lord of the Rings on that one, Erwin, whatever the elf, Liv Tyler, her character, the first time she shows up, she's badass, uses magic, and like solves a problem with the ring wraiths. And then we don't see her use magic again. Well, that's because they were introducing the character, and so they can solve a very minor problem momentarily so that it establishes the character. All right, but still window dressing in that she didn't use magic again and that kind of thing. So it's secondary characters or events. Harry Potter, like the candies, the frogs that bounce around. We're not explaining that. Like someone enchanted frogs to dance, like chocolate frogs, and you eat them. They try to escape. That's not creepy. But anyways, it gives that sense of wonder, doesn't need to be explained. And yeah, that's it really. Second one is soft villain, and probably should be called hard villain, but it's soft because, again, unexplained. Though you want your villains to be hard, probably. These are villain powers that are unexplained and come out of nowhere. In Star Wars, the original trilogy, at the end of the trilogy, the Emperor suddenly shoots force lightning out of his hands. Like, where did that come from? Like, we didn't build that. We didn't set that up at all. Doesn't matter, because it's making the villain more powerful rather than the hero. If the hero is suddenly shot lightning, if Luke suddenly shot lightning out of his hands to defeat the Emperor, you'd call foul, and well, you should. As we'll learn with level systems, this is all about making the hero an underdog. Voldemort, same thing. Like, he was doing powers he shouldn't have been able to. He can fly. No one else can fly. That kind of thing. It made him very, very frightening. Didn't have to explain why or how he could do all of that. So then we have the chosen one, which takes us to Harry really quick, where it's a power that's unknown and makes the hero's life easier. And this is Deus Ex Machina, pretty much. And, Harry couldn't be touched by Voldemort. Oh, why? That's the important part, because it's giving the hero an advantage, but you are required that it will be explored later. You will have to know why Harry and Voldemort are tied together. This is important. So chosen one is used a lot, but you can't just rely on it. You can use it once, maybe twice, and then it becomes repetitive and Deus Machina, and they'll be like, yeah, plot armor. So chosen one, use carefully, explore it if you're going to. Next one, soft hero incomplete. This could be a power or a curse. A lot of times it's a power that you can't control. So it's, oh, I have this power within me and it shoots lightning, but whenever I get angry, it shoots unintentionally, and yeah, oh man, that gives me away every time that I'm hiding from the bad guys. That kind of thing. And much like the other one, it will have to be explored later. It just is not resolved in the story at the moment. That is opposed to soft hero complete, which is the last of the soft systems. There's a video down there, and I have to move it around. I'm sorry, this is probably really boring to watch. I think about it. Let's unshare that screen so you can look at me in all my sweaty glory. Meeting controls, right? No, there it is. Not a Luddite. Anyways, so there we were. Yes. Okay, so soft hero complete means that the hero finished their arc in the current story. And that means they can show powers because those powers are unlocked because of their arc. They have embraced their powers. And I can't think of a really good example from Harry Potter, but first Star Wars movie, Luke is, everyone's like, oh, you should be a Jedi. Like, oh, I can't be a Jedi. Like, oh, you're like your father. Like, oh, no, I'm not going to. Like, trust the Force. Like, eh. And then at the very end, he's like, here's Obi-Wan in his voice, and turns off the computer, blows up the Death Star, and trust the Force. He used the Force in the finale, even though he hadn't really before, and it was okay because it completed his character arc. He, finally trusted himself and his powers, and that unlocked his powers of the Force. So that's the soft one. But like the other ones, you will have to examine this in the next story. The magic will have to get harder, and we're about to look at those harder systems. Side note also from Airbender, Aang, like in the finale, spoiler alert, put your fingers in your ears, take my fingers out when it's safe to. Anyways, he creates energy bending just so he doesn't have to take a life. Like, where did that come from? Like, it was set up, but still. Anyways, all right, you're safe. But it was tied to a character arc. So you can pull abilities out your ass as long as a character arc or a cost system, which is the last one. Let us check, see if there are any other questions or anything. No, all right. Wow, I can't believe people are actually watching this. There's a rip stream. Anyways, second one, and that is abilities, which is the point system. This one's in red, and it is at Zoom. I'm going to share that one, but it will hopefully not be as obnoxious as last time. That is not the thing I want. Level of professionalism. All right. Boop. Okay. Abilities. This is a point system. It is built on top of the soft system. Your soft system has to have what the magic looks like before we can start looking at what it does. It maps to the first rule of Sanderson about how the audience has to understand it, and that's because it's on two different parts of the continuum. It also is, so if it's in the middle, they can't really solve problems with it, as we'll learn about in Willow from Buffy. But if it's the hardest form, then you can solve problems. Sure, go for it. That's what the magic system is all about in that one. It also maps to consistent, as in your magic does this each time. It is consistent in what it does. If I do this, then I can't do this. And we'll look at that in just a second. Anyways, abilities look at the change wrought by the magic. Remember that magic is change that is wrought by unnatural means. So the points and abilities are looking at what the magic does, and with the understanding that the more change that you do, the more difficult it is. So, I've said before, I've used the example before. If I have a system where the first level, I kill like everyone in a 10-foot radius, and the next level spell that I have, I can make someone deaf. And then the third level spell that I learn is like a spark comes from my finger. And you're like, that is a bad system. You unconsciously know that's a bad system because the first thing you learn is the most powerful thing of killing people. That is a large change to a lot of people. The next one is like, I made a guy deaf. I'm like, well, that's one person and there's a lesser effect on them. And then like, oh, I made a spark. I'm like, that affected no one. Like, so we understand that more difficult things with more change done to the environment cost more of whatever it is. And the whatever it is often, called mana, and it's kind of arbitrary. I just skipped a section, so let's back up. And we're taking a lot of, we're borrowing a lot, like I did in my book. RPGs are really, really great. Role-playing games, for those not in the know, though, if you're watching this, I bet you've played an RPG before. Anyways, they're really great for world building because, starting with Dungeons and Dragons, it wasn't just authors who were making world building. We kind of gave everyone the tools and let them start building their own worlds, and then saw what they did and saw what they, so, it wasn't just, point something percent of the population that was building worlds. It was a whole percentage that was building worlds. But anyways, we take a lot from RPGs, which are really important because they standardize things. I maintain that Dungeons and Dragons codified what it was to be an elf. Like what an elf was in other stories. It's a lot of stuff. They didn't even have pointy ears. They didn't have pointy ears in Tolkien. Like there's like a side note. It says like, oh, their elves are more leaf shaped. I think it was just leaf shaped. That's all they said. Anyways, but Dungeons and Dragons came along and were like, what an elf is this, and they have higher dexterity and they are smaller and pointy ears. And then we all started listening to that. But they needed that for the game dynamics. Same is true about magic systems. D&D borrowed from Vance's Dying Earth. Anyways, you need a shared system. So RPGs are really great about that. I kind of went on a tangent there. So we're going to borrow, when we're talking about measuring change, we're going to take what RPGs do and look at the amount of change, the range that the change happens in, the duration, and the area of effect. A lot of times magic systems use mana, and which is a really cool thing. I highly recommend Googling why do we use the word mana, because it's like not Micronesian, but that area word. And like, what? Why do we, okay, why do we use that for all magic systems? Anyways, look it up. It's pretty cool. It's worth a Google. So back to magic systems. Where did they go? All right. Anyways, I scale them. I scale them on a set of 1 to 10. As it says right there, it's all arbitrary. What you choose to scale and measure by is up to you. Base 10 is great because I got 10 fingers, it's better than like the clock, which is base 12. Yeah. Anyways, so I scale it 1 to 10 levels, and then, you can scale it as linearly. So 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, up to 10. You can put it exponentially, logarithmically. I use a modified Fibonacci just so I want it to scale. I want it to be larger as it gets to these larger levels up here. And, but again, arbitrary. And then once you have those kind of numbers and anyway, so you can then start putting into those effects. So like change and damage, like that's what we want most of our magic to do, is to make a fireball that hurts someone because we're terrible human beings. Anyways, so you start setting that up to like changing the damage. Okay, so you could start setting up your points, and I have a video that's on this website that if you want to look in this more, but you start with the smallest amount of change that I could do, and then the largest amount of change, and then you kind of just eyeball it and put them in there. Duration, range, etc. And you can use this to say how powerful a magic should be. So as the example on the side there says, a fireball that does drastic harm. Well, look up drastic harm, that's 10, as I arbitrarily defined it, of course. That does, damage to, what was it? 5 to 10 people. So I look over on the chart like, oh, that's 5 points right there. Instantaneously, well, that's 0 points because that's a duration, 10 feet away. All right, so that's an 18-point spell. So now we're starting to codify what the magic can do. And we also have made the magic much more understandable and consistent. As I said, that's the C that goes with it. Let's see. So, but if you're going to do this, you're going to also want to give your characters like a kind of a pool, like, oh, they have 60 points to use. And that's why that these points, that's why the point systems are in both the middle and so back to our little, so as we see here, we're moving from soft to hard of our magic skill on this scale, which I probably should have shown earlier. Anyways, points opaque is the middle one. And really can't solve any problems with that one. opposed to points hard, and that's the domain of progression and lit RPG, where it is spelled out. You know what the spells do, what they cost. There is no faffing about on that one. So, so it makes sense. It's all about resource management when you're all this far out, where I'm making this choice. I'm going to cast this spell because it does this much damage, but it only costs this much. So I'm being clever instead of using this big spell. It's all about the cleverness, as we'll discuss later. So when it comes to most times we see it's points opaque over here, and points opaque is, as the name might connote. Of course, I had to turn it off right before I had a burp. Anyways, it means that you're just kind of eyeballing it. You're like, well, the character is kind of mid-level, so they can do kind of mid-level things, and I'm just going to unconsciously define what that is. You can eyeball it, or you can go hard, as I did with that, and write out your points to go, oh, this is this, okay, that's pretty good. One of the things that they have to be careful with the points opaque is called the Exhaustion Trap, and it's known that in your finale, your characters are going to be at their lowest moment. They're going to be at their weakest. And, and if I'm writing the story of the guy with the sword, and he's going to be tired, he's going to land on the ground, his sword's out of his grasp, and the bad guy is saying things to him, and he's going to find that inner resolve to grab the sword at the last minute and, kill the guy. It's a very basic story. It's harder to do that with magic, because if you assume that they have the inner resolve, then you're like, you're assuming that the character is out of points. They are, oh, they're so exhausted. They have barely any magic left, but they're going to really need a really powerful spell for the finale. It goes back to Sanderson's first rule of well, you just kind of pulled that out of your ass. Of course they found that inner strength. You're going to have to either set it up through the character arc, or it's not going to be satisfying, or you really have to set it up with a points hard system. That's the exhaustion trap of you want to make your characters really exhausted for the finale, but there are some bad things that can happen if you do that. Let's see. So anyways, the point opaque, which as I said is used more often, is usually used for secondary characters, opposed to the points hard system at the far end of the spectrum. That one you can use for your protagonist, but much like Buffy, it's not Buffy who has the magic. She has magic abilities, yes, but she's not using magic, that goes to Willow. And Willow doesn't solve the problems with it very often, unless it's a cost system, which we'll discuss later, a cost fluctuating system specifically. So again, if you're going to, cost systems are used for side characters, and they're mostly about setting up dilemma of if I'm making this choice, I'm going to do this ability, means I can't do this other ability because I'm going to be out of power. Very intellectual, as we're about to see. Again, no good Harry Potter reference, because Harry Potter is a level and cost system. But Buffy, again, Willow from Buffy, Raceland from Dragonlance, which I completely blanked on. Another great example of a side character in the first in the first series, anyways. We kind of understood what the magic system. If you played D&D, you knew what the magic system was that they were doing, but it was kept opaque to readers who weren't aware of that. So Raceland could do things, but it had to be tied to a character arc or resource management, and it was very character arc in the end of the first trilogy. Anyways, let's check to see if there's any questions in that chat. Anyone? That is not the right chat. Professionalism. All right. Oh, okay. Yes. You could want a fireball because they look cool and not when anything. Okay, that is one thing I meant to say. And that is actually on the website. So what the powers do, we could also flip it around. And let's get back to that screen share. You think I'd be good at that by now, wouldn't you? You would be wrong. All right, so back to AALC. All right, All right, what these things can do is completely arbitrary. Like I said, I used the fireball example, and as it says a little further down, you can flip it around and say you wanted to heal someone. And so a healing spell that does, heals a harm instantaneously at a mile away, should cost this much. The cost system, the point system, just says what it does. Appearance says what it actually is. So yeah, you could, what the effect of the change is what the point system is, what the magic looks like, what it is supposedly doing. That is the appearance. So that's how it's building on top of that. All right, that was probably not the greatest I've ever done. All right, I don't know what socket and live tap support means. All right, so Brielle and Della. All right. Asco, how would you approach a magic system? The story isn't really about the magic. I don't want my stories to be about a character learning or using magic, but simply set in a world of wonder. That goes right back to that soft system, window dressing. Cool things are happening around them. They can explore those things, but it's not about harnessing the power. It's about exploring and seeing the wonder. And that's a really cool, like there are not nearly enough exploratory. Pernassi, that one, the Susan Clark, oh man, if I messed that up. Anyways, her latest book about the guy who goes into this other world and explores it. Really great example of that. Very just, again, butter soft. And they do explain it a little more at the end, but it's, yeah, they make that sense of wonder. You don't have to understand it. Encanto, like they kind of explain the magic, but it really doesn't matter because you're having such a good time with the magic. Like it does this. Why? Doesn't matter. How can we use it? Meh, So, I mean, it's about the characters, that kind of thing. You don't have to explain everything. Sandman, again, doesn't need explanation as long as it's not about gaining power and that kind of thing. Like Sandman was fun because it was exploring all sorts of weird stuff and you never knew what it was going to do. So harness that. Make sure if you want a soft system, embrace it, but just know that you can't solve problems with it. So just know its limits. All right, water. All right, our third one, levels and limits. Those are the fun ones. This maps to Sanderson's second rule of limitations are more, bigger than, greater than powers. It also looks at creativity because this one is all about how characters use their powers creatively. These are different than point systems because they don't drain the user. It's all about unlocking powers. And once they're unlocked, you pretty much have unlimited use of it. If you watch Harry Potter, they got their little wands out and they're like, zoop, 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 zoop. They could zoop really fast. I mean, pretty much as long as they could keep moving. Same in Airbender, as long as they could keep moving, they could keep bending. It was all about physical exhaustion rather than the magic being out. It was all about learning the magic. 3 out of 5 of my exemplars use this, the Jedi in the movies version, Harry Potter, and again, Avatar. Again, you unlock an ability and you can resolve conflicts because the audience is going to understand the powers that you have. They understand what your powers can do, which is because we're building on top of the point system, and they understand the limits of what it can't do, which is what forces the characters to be creative. This is because the characters are usually underdogs in level systems. Again, Avatar, they were kids fighting against adults and the whole firebending army and all these other things. Same with Harry Potter. They were kids fighting adults who had finished their schooling. And we'll look at it in just a second. Harry Potter is like the most obvious leveling system when you look at it. So yeah, what are the things? Boop, boop, ba-doo. Everyone's tired of hearing me go boop. I'd say raise your hand, but yeah. Anyways, go share that one. All right, so leveling systems. Bop, bop, bop. Yeah, all about the protagonists being underdogs, working against higher level people. Where are they? All right, we've got our 4 types. The soft one, static, is that you have a power and like that's what you got. That's it. Like this one and the next one are really great for superheroes. Wolverine, like he's got a sense of smell. Like it's not going to increase. He just has a great sense of smell, has a great sense of healing. You can say that it increased or not. So again, it's an innate ability. Partial tongue for Harry. Like I can talk to snakes. Does it get better? No. Doesn't matter. Like you've unlocked this ability, you have it, use it all the time. In D&D, like, oh, I have night vision, like, okay, or whatever so yeah, you have that. The time turner is actually a soft level static because it does one thing and it's pretty soft, but we're going to look at that in just a second. It's a counterexample, in fact. These powers can be used to solve the conflict exactly once. Like Wolverine can hide that he has healing ability from the villain, And so it can surprise the villain with it, and or Harry can use his parcel tongue cleverly. But after that, like, then it's Deus Ex Machina, or like it's repetitive. It's more than Deus Ex Machina. It has to be creative. This magic type is all about how they use powers creatively. Second one, soft level advancing, just means that the abilities, once unlocked, get more powerful as they get older. I'm stronger now that I'm better at this one magic now that I have spent more time with it. Or again, superhero powers. Cyclops' beam could do, to destroy a house at first, and then as he got older, it could destroy a city. I'm just making that one up. I don't know if that's what it was like. And Harry, this is kind of his connection to Voldemort. At first it was very soft. We don't know why he, has this connection. And then whichever one, Half-Blood Prince, we start exploring it of, how can he get into Harry's head? How can Harry get into his head? So it becomes more powerful as time goes on. Superhero powers. All right, next one, hard level static, unchanging abilities with clear-cut limits. This one's kind of cool because it's not usually held by the protagonist. It is usually held by someone the protagonist knows, and then the protagonist uses that power cleverly. Dobby. All right. Okay, let's go with Genie. Is a great example from Aladdin. He's got the super power, but you only get 3 wishes, and these are things you can't do with the wishes. So, anyways, can't do these things with the wishes. Or same with Dobby, like they have this kind of really powerful, but no one uses them and no one really understands it. But the protagonist exploits the magic system, their understanding of the magic that they've learned over the course of the story. This is Screenwriting 101 here. And they use that exploitation understanding. All right, I really got to go quick. I'm sorry, this is terrible. Hard static. This one is Harry Potter. I spent way too long. All right. Back to that one. Share. All right. The hard static, static level system advancing, I'm just spinning these fast, is a lot like the points opaque. You kind of create magic for it. Harry Potter is really great because, when the characters start, they are level 1. They are learning level 1 spells. They unlock these level 1 spells, at which point they can use them as much as they want. But they are really low level spells. And so you go back to your point system, and you can either eyeball it and just say like, oh, this is a very low level ability, I'm going to give it to the kids, which I'm sure is what Rowling did. And and then when they get to the second year, they're going to learn more powerful spells, and then they're going to unlock those, and once they're unlocked it with their understanding, they can use them as much as they need. Again, have to use them cleverly. Anyways, if you do that, you can also go back up here to the set up a real spell itself, and it's going to do this and this, and it's unlocked. And if you do that, though, you should probably have a smaller pool for the characters. So like a 3rd level character can only unlock 15-point spells since they're unlimited in their uses. Point system, they're going to want a larger pool to work with since they're going to be using a whole bunch of those. I don't think we actually have time for the time turner counter example, but basically it boils down to, it was set up in the story, and it was well done in the story, and it worked in the story itself, but it was really powerful. It was too powerful for a 3rd-year student to be using. And I think Rowling realized that after the fact, because you have this thing, and it's a very soft power, that you could have solved everything. They could have saved Harry's parents. They could have stopped anyone's, escaping Azkaban, which is why she wrote it out of the story. It didn't make sense if you actually break down what its powers are versus who had it. Like the levels were really mismatched. So I think that's why it was removed from the story after the fact. It was used very well in the story because it was part of the character arc. She finally revealed it, and finally everything made sense. It was hinted at. Anyways, I should have talked more about that and talked faster. Costs, that's our last one. Again, it goes to his 3rd rule, Sanderson's, use what you have. And that's how we're going to look at how we can use those things to unlock characters' powers, make them much more powerful than they should be. This is how Harry and anyways, potions. It also looks at completeness. There's the 4 Cs. You've thought out everything. You've found a way to give your characters power when the story requires it. All right. So as we said about the point system of what the magic does, it creates dilemma. And if I do this, then I can't do these other things because I've drained myself. Cost system makes it emotional because the point system is intellectual. This is what I can and can't do. Cost system is like, this is what I have to give up to do this power, and nothing is free, and we just kind of expect that if I do this, it's going to hurt. So the characters are making sacrifices for their magic, and that's how they can get more powerful than they should. There's kind of two rules to this. The first is that costs must be greater than the abilities that are being done, or else it doesn't feel like a cost. It doesn't feel like a sacrifice. And the sacrifice has to be witnessed by the audience. Otherwise, you just like direct you're like, oh, I spent 6 months studying this thing and it was really, really grueling. Like, well, did I see you? Like, nah, but I'm powerful now. Like, nah, that's not going to fly. I have a writer friend who was going to kind of be like, well, if I have flashbacks to it later, like, nope, not going to work. They have to see it to feel like it's a sacrifice. Otherwise, you just said it was. Caveat, it can happen off screen. Like Odin, like lost his eye, like for his power. So you can cheat it slightly. Just know that there has to be some physical scene. Raceland, again, huge power jump, and he was horribly scarred for it for life. Skin put gold, turned gold, et cetera, et cetera. So two types of cost systems. One is the fixed and one is the cheaty one. I love the cheaty one. All right. Costs are static, which is just like you have a cost every time you use this magic. It could be something like I lose a memory, or I have to lose a point of damage if you're going to do a RPG version of it. But you can also use it to make potions, which is an impediment equation. The second one is the fluctuating, which just means that you have a power jump and that you make up for it with something. Real quick, impediments. Let's see. But both of them use impediments right here. Boop. Which are things that make life more difficult for the character. These are things that, like the length of time it causes to, it takes to cast the spell, or the special rare materials that you need. How exhausted are you afterwards? And being smart enough to do it, special times, like it has to be cast at midnight at a solstice. These are loss of sanity and morality. These are things that make the character's life more difficult or scars them forever. So potions are a great example of this, because if you think about Harry Potter in the first season, again, first level characters, but they do polyjuice potion, which is like really cool, really powerful. And they did it with impediments because they had to sacrifice for it. They had to sacrifice, I think, 21 days, or like from one point to one point of this casting it. Needed special materials. They had to go gather it. They had to go get the hair of Goyle and Doc, I don't know what his name was. Anyways, they had to go get special ingredients. It had a really long time. Only Hermione could do it. There was a high level of failure involved. This makes the sudden jump in power feel earned. So you can do it that way of like, well, there is this magic spell that is out there. And that's how a lot of the second one is. This is impediment power leaps, as in, in Buffy, a lot of times, Willow needed to cast a spell, or Buffy needed to cast a spell, and Buffy can't cast magic. How are we going to do this? Well, you put a lot of impediments in their way, and you like, well, they have to get this special book and they have to cast it at this special time, and it takes 10 minutes, at which point all the vampires are going to know where she is and are attacking her, so we're going to have to keep her safe. Like they throw all those impediments in the way so it feels earned when she does something she shouldn't do. And so you can do power jumps that way, that too, power leaps. And you can eyeball it like I just did, which is what we've been doing for forever. Or you can price it out. You can go to your handy charts that I have over here, because handy charts are always wonderful. And, set up impediments, the same sort of thing right here where, it gives you this many points. So let's say it's a 45 point spell and I have 25 points to work with. So how are we going to make up those, extra 20 points? We say it takes, a day to cast the spell. It doesn't work right there. That's 5 points right there. And you're going to be super exhausted. So that's going to be 15 points, and it's going to cost, another 5 hundreds of dollars of material. Now, that was just a quick on the fly version of it, but, and it doesn't have to be actual dollar values. It could be a special thing. They used it in Angel, I think in the finale, of like, well, we're going to need to go get that special thing from that demon so that we could harness that and da-da-da-da-da-da. That's what's really cool about the cost system, the impediments, is that you can use it as a MacGuffin. You can use it as plot points. The characters have to do these things, much like Harry and the potions. They have to go smuggle the ingredients out, have to gather them, have to get the hair. They become plot points. And that's really cool. So you can do it with a character arc where they've channeled so much energy that they've left scarred Raceland style, or you can say that, well, they have to get this gauntlet of whatever to channel the power. Anyways, you can do that kind of stuff. Last one is morality and sanity. I don't have a lot of time with this, but morality, all of these systems have morality mixed in there. If you use the power, you're going to lose something of yourself. And the Jedi had to go into the dark side, and Avatar, Katara was scared of bloodbending, not scared. Aang created energy bending, so he didn't have to have a moral choice. Lord of the Rings, the ring corrupts you. Horcruxes in Harry Potter, this really, really powerful spell, but you have to murder someone. Moral choice. So Game of Thrones, Melisandre and Stannis, which is kind of cool because she's window dressing soft, and she becomes harder as time goes on, where you start learning more about her magic and when she becomes a POV. But it was all about seeing Stannis's moral choice and moral degradation to gain his magic. That made it a cost system. So quick takeaways. AALC, appearance, abilities, limits, and cost. What does the magic look like? Appearance, what does it do? Abilities, how do the characters think creatively with it in the story? Limits, and then what does it cost the characters to make the story better? That's your cost, right? Pretty obvious. We have 4 minutes. I was going to have a homework assignment, but obviously there is no time for that. Maybe I'll put it on the website. Again, AALC, mdpresley.com. I've also got, if you're into world building, as I obviously am, boop, 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 boop. So much booping. All right. I probably should just hit home. Anyways, there is a lot of information about magic systems, the AAL system, AALC. Also, this wonderful handout right here, PDF form. But I also have world building tools and prompts. Top-down versus bottom-up worksheets, a Bible, website stuff to use, to go to, books, communities, videos, and just random things I've been collecting over the year. Please take advantage of that, because I've spent a lot of time on it. All right. Are there any questions that I have possible time to? If you don't, because... All right. Anyways, Twitter handle is MD Presley, because I'm very clever like that. It's on my website. Have any questions? Twitter me, tweet me, twat me. Oh wait, that was not right. Oh man, what a way to end it at. Anyways, AALC. I hope that it is good for you. It was fun to do, and if anyone has made it to this far into it, congratulations. I'm sure this was difficult. Thank you all. Make sure to check out the rest of QuaranCon. Thank you to Victoria, oh crud, anyways, and Pam, who have put this all together. They are amazing people. And everyone should take advantage of all these videos that are on YouTube. A lot of great panels. I'll be on the world building panel tomorrow. Thank you very much. I stop video now.